So hello everybody, I'm Diana Saville, I'm co-founder and COO of BrainMind. And so now for something completely different, I'm just going to ask you to zoom way out of the tech specs and feasibility questions and just sort of think about how ideas leave the lab and enter society and the stakeholders required and the decision-making required and so incentives and who makes those decisions. We're all here at this workshop having this incredibly exciting discussion. And how did we get here? We didn't all just one day decide to get up here and show up. Foresight invited us, and in order for them to be able to do that, they had to have funding to be able to do that. And
thanks, guys.
Well, yeah. So follow the money and look how things get created. So BrainMind is an organization with 3,000 members, and it's a mix of scientists, entrepreneurs, investors, and philanthropists, all interested in advancing high-impact neuroscience. And the thesis is basically that the brain is a really important place to get things right. And when you're scaling ideas, we need to think about which ones we should focus on first. And then maybe we can attract talent and funding and other resources into those spaces. And so if you take a look at these focus areas, we talked to experts in the field, we talked to leaders of top institutions and people like Tom Camille, who's behind Convergent. And we asked them this question: what is underinvested relative to importance in brain science? And if you look at the bottom row here, this is basically where WBE intersects up top as well. And then I did just want to take a minute here to talk about responsible innovation, because I think that's where the overlap is most salient for us in the work that we're doing. But just briefly, the format of what we do: we bring people together. We do scientific conferences. We pick people out who are doing really exciting stuff that ought to get funded. We put them up on stage. And half the people in any given room actually have the resources to make something go forward. So skipping over that. And I will just say that as we did this, and as we realized we got a room full of people and 300 people and $300 billion of personal wealth and another $300 billion in managed capital, we said, hold on here. It's great that we have these nice discussions with people to determine our focus areas, but we really need to think about ethics and alignment and what we put on stage. And that got us into this world of thinking about neuroethics specifically, but really cognitive liberty, data ethics, AI ethics. It's all kind of, you can munge it together and just think about how these technologies impact our inner worlds and our autonomy and agency and decision making. So the problem that we discovered is that there are 20 or so high-level guidelines already published in this space. Academics have been thinking about this for decades. And now academics are thinking about, in particular, the applications to AI, but at least as pertains to brain technology and neurotechnology, there's been a lot of thought that has gone into this already. The difficulty is that, first of all, I don't know how many of you have already read all of these frameworks and are using them every day. I didn't know about them until I spoke with neuroethicists about them. And frankly, neuroethicists are tired of just sitting around talking to each other. What they would really like to do is talk to researchers and entrepreneurs and investors and the people in our community. And so that's where we got excited, because we do have this community of people. We have a little bit of a sense of what drives them and that we can get them all in the room together and hopefully motivate them to some collective action. But what we did was, the last couple of years, we just sat down and we talked to each of these stakeholder groups specifically. We asked if they knew anything about these ethical frameworks or whether to use them, how to use them. And then we really queried into what might make them want to engage with these type of frameworks. And we pulled that information out, and we're going to do something about it. By the way, this is just an acknowledgement that there's a huge amount of private sector funding going to this space, so we paid special attention to making sure that we're engaging entrepreneurs at startups and larger tech companies, as well as investors in these spaces. Aforementioned point being that this is sort of how things scale and leave the lab. So the plan for now, don't bother reading the text, we are going to do it in a Silmar for brain and mind. And if you take away one thing from this presentation, is we don't want it to be about, we don't want another charter. Okay, we've got the 20 that were already created, but we want our practical tools. So this is the thing that I said that I needed at this conference. If any of you are aware of anything practical and implementable that is stakeholder specific, I'll give you a couple of examples. Bylaws for companies, codes of conduct that have been written, points to consider documents. This could be something that investors and philanthropic orgs use as a way to screen out potential grantees or recipients of startup funds. And then questions to guide research, that one actually has already been created. It's just I don't know how many people know about it. The Global Neuroethics Summit put together a framework for researchers. These are the questions that you can actually ask yourself while you're designing your proposal. So there are these tools that are starting to come out. We're going to hopefully socialize them and popularize them in 2024 at a big conference with exemplars, leaders across the space, and that's it. Exciting stuff.
Thank you.
Yes.
So thank you so much for telling me. I also had no idea there were so many of these frameworks already. And I was kind of curious, like, is there any, like, do you think any of that stuff translates to alignment? Or do we need like a totally new framework from that angle?
So, okay, the word framework, if I had $1 for every time somebody said the word framework, it's really, really tricky. I think what we need more than anything right now, because so much of this stuff is already happening. The startups are already coming to me and asking, oh, do we have a neuroethicist or an AI ethicist that we can work with right now because we're developing a product right now and we already have the funding and we're ready to go. So my feeling is that good enough would be great, and what I'd really like to do is start to recruit scholars of AI ethics and neuroethics to leave their academic positions to consult with startups, because there's an enormous marketplace for it. And even just helping people in the design thinking process of building in the frameworks, asking these questions as they develop the products, is better than the current state, which is zero engagement with these things or even knowledge that they exist.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, yeah, I think maybe if it's a fast one, why not? Let's take one fast one.
Yeah, I'm just curious about that model of consulting versus having people in positions of power within those companies making decisions from the top down. There seems to be...
Yeah, actually that's the easy part. The crazy thing about this is when we did all these stakeholder interviews, we took people like the Midas-less investors and people at the tops of big companies whose names you know. And they're all for it because they recognize there's a market value to de-risking their products and to be perceived as being ethical. So they actually want to do it. The gap is actually in the tools and the implementation. So yes, obviously that's actually the most important thing, but it turns out that's not the missing piece. There is the willingness and interest in alignment.
That's great.
But of course, everybody wants guardrails. Nobody wants regulation, and fortunately, regulation is too slow anyway for it to matter. People want guardrails. They want it to be optional. Better than nothing.
Yeah.